Unified middleweight champion Canelo Alvarez has been stripped of his IBF for not fighting his mandatory Sergey Derevyanchenko after he was previously just stripped of his WBC for avoiding Jermall Charlo. The IBF has now mandated Sergey Derevyanchenko and Gennady Golovkin to fight for the vacant title. Canelo Alvarez is now in serious negotiations to unify with WBO champion Demetrius Andrade. Tap in. All right, I'm ready.
They know when I was down, now they see I bounce back. Now they all in their feelings. My partner told me, King, don't worry about that. Said it's time to make a killing. It's a new day, getting new money, but I don't with new. I'm just sticking to the business and the money is the mission, about to stack it to the ceiling. Now they all in their feelings. So you mad, bro? Now they all in their feelings. Tell me what you all in their feelings. All in their feelings. So you mad? Now they all in their feelings. Tell me what you all in their feelings. All in their feelings. It's a new day. They all in their feelings. Money, but I got them all in their feelings. All in their feelings. Now they all in their feelings.
King Boxing Talk. Welcome back to the channel, man. Welcome back. Welcome back. I just first want to say, if you hear some background noise, I'm driving right now. You know what I'm saying? And I got my AC on blast because it's kind of toasty out here in these Texas streets, man, you know. But we got some things to talk about, you know, real quick. Just make sure you tap in with your boy. Hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoy this content, please share the video on your social media platforms, your Facebook and your Twitter. Let's talk about it, man. Some crazy things going on in the middleweight division. It's some exciting news, it's some good news, but at the same time, it's some bad news. It's crazy. We're gonna dive right into it. So Mike Coppinger, he reports, sources tell, and I'll put the source link in the description as well, but Mike Coppinger, he reports, sources tell at The Athletic Box that negotiations between Canelo Alvarez and Sergey Derevyanchenko are now officially dead. Alvarez has been stripped of his IBF middleweight title after 3 p.m. Eastern deadline came and went. Sides could not agree on money. He goes on to say the IBF is expected to now officially order a middleweight title fight between Sergey Derevyanchenko and Gennady Golovkin, and it's expected negotiations will go smoothly per sources. Sources tell at The Athletic Box that Canelo Alvarez and Demetrius Andrade are now in serious talks for a middleweight unification bout on the zone. What in the world is going on, people? Now, like I said, this is good news. This is good news for the fact that we wanted to see, for a while, we've been wanting to see guys like Canelo Alvarez and Triple G fight the young, up-and-coming, undefeated fighters such as Demetrius Andrade and Jermall Charlo. Unfortunately, Jermall Charlo, he's still on the outside looking in, but it's looking like we're finally going to get that Canelo Alvarez and Demetrius Andrade fight. I'm gonna get to why it's bad the way that it happened. We're also gonna be talking about Gennady Golovkin and Sergey Derevyanchenko. Now, Gennady Golovkin and Canelo, both, they put themselves in a position that's basically kind of like a backward step. You know, these are things that they could have already taken care of, and this is why. So let's just start all the way from the beginning when Danny Jacobs, he unified with Gennady Triple G Golovkin. Danny Jacobs at the time, I believe, had the WBA. Gennady Golovkin had the IBF and the WBC. I thought Danny Jacobs won the fight. They gave the decision to Gennady Golovkin, so now he's a unified champion holding 3 of the 4 major belts. He now has the WBA, the IBF, and the WBC. This leads up to his first fight with Canelo Alvarez. His first fight with Canelo Alvarez ended in a draw. A lot of people say Golovkin won that fight. However, it ended in the draw. Golovkin maintained all 3 of his belts. With Golovkin having that IBF belt before he fought Danny Jacobs, Sergey Derevyanchenko was in line to be the mandatory challenger for the IBF title. However, after Triple G and Canelo 1 ended in a draw, Golovkin, only thing he wanted was a rematch with Canelo. So the rematch comes. They got the date scheduled. The rematch is on. However, in training camp, the weeks leading up to the rematch, Canelo Alvarez, he fails a drug test. He blames it on the meet in Mexico. You know, whatever happened with that, it happened. He failed the drug test, and he received a 6-month suspension. They already had the date set for Gennady and Canelo too, but Canelo received a 6-month suspension. So Gennady Golovkin says, well, we already got this date scheduled. I've already been in camp training. I still want to fight on this date. The IBF says, well, if you still want to fight on this date, you have a mandatory challenger in Sergey Derevyanchenko. You should go ahead and fight him. However, instead, Golovkin chose to not fight his mandatory at the time. He wanted to fight lesser competition, obviously, because he did not want to risk losing, which would have ruined his chances of getting a rematch with Canelo after Canelo served his 6 months ban. Follow me? All right. So instead of fighting his mandatory, Sergey Derevyanchenko, the IBF, for some reason, granting him an exception, and he ends up cherry-picking Vanes Martirosyan, a guy who had just came off a knockout. And Golovkin, he knocks the guy out, I believe it was in the second round. Knocks Vanes Martirosyan out in the second round. And he promised the IBF that after he fought Vanes Martirosyan, he would take care of his mandatory and Sergey Derevyanchenko. But after he knocks out Vanes Martirosyan, Canelo comes back from his 6-month suspension, and instead of going into negotiations with Sergey Derevyanchenko, Gennady Golovkin, he opts to go ahead and do the rematch with Canelo Alvarez. And because of that, notice when Golovkin fought Canelo for the second time, the IBF belt was not on the line in the rematch, and that is because the IBF stripped Gennady Golovkin for not fighting Sergey Derevyanchenko. Keep that in mind. That's going to be real important. We're going to come back to that. You feel me? The IBF stripped him for not fighting his mandatory Sergey Derevyanchenko. So, Sergey Derevyanchenko and Danny Jacobs were ordered by the IBF to fight for that vacant title, in which Danny Jacobs, he won that fight and became the IBF. After he had just lost his WBA to Gennady Golovkin, Danny Jacobs fights Sergey Derevyanchenko for the vacated IBF, and he wins that fight. Get back to Gennady Golovkin and Canelo, the rematch. Canelo wins that fight. I thought he won it easily. I don't think there was any controversy. He backed Triple G up the whole fight, something we had never seen before. We've never seen, we've always seen Gennady Golovkin coming forward. Canelo backed him up the whole fight. I thought it was no controversy. Canelo won. So Canelo now walks away as the WBC and WBA world champion. He now has 2 belts. After he fights after he fights Gennady in the rematch, Golovkin pushes for a 3rd fight, and Canelo tells him, if you want a 3rd fight, go and get another belt. You have no belts, go get another belt. What does Gennady Golovkin do? Instead of going and getting another belt, he goes and fights a Steve Rose, an opponent that nobody knows anything about. He goes and fights a Steve Rose. What does Canelo Alvarez do? He goes and he unifies with Danny Jacobs. Keep in mind, like I said, Danny Jacobs lost his WBA to Golovkin. Golovkin was stripped of the IBF for not fighting Sergey Derevyanchenko. So the IBF ordered Derevyanchenko to fight Danny Jacobs for the IBF. Danny Jacobs won that fight. So now he's the IBF champion. Canelo unifies with Danny Jacobs. Canelo wins that fight. I don't think there was any controversy there. As much as I love Danny Jacobs, I don't think there was any controversy in that fight. So now Canelo has unified with Danny Jacobs, and he has the IBF, the WBC, and the WBA. Canelo, out of his own mouth, said he wanted to be undisputed. You're one belt away from being undisputed. The other belt that we have not talked about, the WBO, has been held by Demetrius Andrade. Demetrius Andrade had the last piece to the puzzle. Canelo, you said you wanted to be undisputed. However, the WBC comes in and tells Canelo, your mandatory is Jermall Charlo. We've been wanting to see Canelo face a Demetrius Andrade or a Jermall Charlo. We've been wanting to see Gennady Golovkin face a Demetrius Andrade or a Jermall Charlo. Let me back up. Canelo Alvarez was avoiding Jermall Charlo. He did not want to face Jermall Charlo. In my opinion, I believe he was wanting Golovkin to step up and fight one of those guys first, because it seems as if, Canelo has been fighting the tougher competition when it comes to the two, between Gennady Golovkin and Canelo. And so Canelo's like, why am I fighting all the tough competition? And Golovkin, on the other hand, is fighting a Vanes Monterosian. Golovkin is fighting a Steve Rose. Why am I the only one fighting tougher competition? So he wanted Golovkin to fight Andrade or Charlo and win one of those belts and then make the third fight. But he didn't get what he wanted. Triple G continued to cherry pick, and eventually Canelo Alvarez was stripped of his WBC title for not fighting Jermall Charlo. Canelo said he wanted to be undisputed. There was only one belt left for him to get, which was the WBO held by Demetrius Andrade. Had he told the WBC, hey, Demetrius Andrade has the last piece to the puzzle, I want to go and fight this guy so I can become undisputed, the WBC would have given him an exception. He would not have to have fought Jermall Charlo at that time. He could have went on and unified and became undisputed if he could have beaten Demetrius Andrade. And then the WBC would have ordered him to fight Jermall Charlo later down the line. But since he did not negotiate an undisputed match with Demetrius Andrade, and he refused to fight Jermall Charlo, he was stripped of the WBC. So now he's down to two belts. Now he's down to the IBF and the WBA. Look at how things have turned out. Look how the tables have turned. So now, not only did he have mandatory problems with the WBC, Sergey Derevyanchenko was once again named the mandatory challenger for the IBF. The same belt that Gennady Golovkin vacated and didn't want to fight Sergey Derevyanchenko, who was the mandatory at that time. Derevyanchenko is now once again the mandatory for the IBF. And Canelo failed to make deadlines. They said he missed the deadline to request an exception, and that they had to come to an agreement by 3 p.m. yesterday with Sergey Derevyanchenko. Now, this whole time we're looking for Canelo to fight on the Mexican date in September, Mexican Independence Day weekend. And Canelo, he's trying to fight Sergey Kovalev at 175, which to me didn't make any sense. Canelo, you never fought. You never had a fight at 175. You've only fought one time at 168. And there's so much that you got to take care of in your own division at 160. Such as doing what you said you wanted to do, which was become undisputed. So now, Canelo, he had already been stripped of the WBC. Jamal Charlo was named the WBC champion. He was down to 2 belts, the IBF and the WBA. And yesterday, the IBF strips Canelo for not negotiating a fight with Sergey Derevyanchenko. So Canelo, now you're down to 1 belt. You're far away from undisputed, something that you said you wanted. You're down to 1 belt. And guess what? Now that you're down to 1 belt, the IBF has now ordered Sergey Derevyanchenko to fight Gennady Triple G Golovkin. And according to the sources, that fight looks like it's going to come to fruition. Gennady Golovkin. You see how you ducked Sergey Derevyanchenko in the past to chase the Canelo rematch and got stripped for your title? And now what do you have to do? You have to fight Sergey Derevyanchenko for that same title. Canelo, do you see how, well, Canelo, now that he's been stripped of 2 titles and he's down to 1, now he wants to go into negotiations with Demetrius Andrade. That's a beautiful thing because we wanted to see that fight. However, when Canelo had 3 of the belts, if he just would have taken that fight when he had 3 of the belts, this fight could have meant so much more because it would have been for undisputed. Undisputed. Now you're fighting Demetrius Andrade in a unification bout just for the WBO and the WBA world titles. You're still going to have a lot of work to do to become undisputed. And at this point, I'm not even sure if that's something that Canelo still wants to do. However, like I said, that was something he said out of his own mouth. He said he wanted to be undisputed champion of the world in the middleweight division. You can see how both of these guys, they took the long route when it could have been so much easier. Golovkin, if you just would have fought Derevyanchenko in the beginning, Derevyanchenko wouldn't be in this position to where now you have to fight him for the same belt that you vacated already. Canelo, you had 3 of the major titles. All you had to do was fight Demetrius Andrade, and if you would have done that, you wouldn't have been stripped of the WBC. The WBC would have allowed you, the WBC would have allowed you to go and fight for undisputed, but you didn't fight for undisputed, and you refused to fight Jamal Charlo, the mandatory for the WBC, so therefore, we're going to strip you of that title. But in conclusion, I'm glad we're getting these fights. To me, these are going to be 2 good fights, 2 interesting fights. I like the matchup. We've been wanting to see Canelo face a Demetrius Andrade or Jamal Charlo, so I'm glad that that's finally happening. And then if both of these guys are successful, then that would make Canelo Triple G3 that much more bigger. Them doing that fight before now, it really wasn't, to me, it wasn't that big of a fight. I wasn't that interested in seeing it. I do want to see it, but before we saw Canelo Triple G3, we need to see more unifications. Because like I said, Gennady Golovkin, he didn't have a belt to bring to the table. If you go and fight a Demetrius Andrade or a Jamal Charlo and win one of those belts, then that makes Canelo Triple G3 that much more bigger. It didn't happen, but we are where we are now. Nothing is set in stone. Nothing is locked in. This is the sport of boxing. So it's not a guarantee that Canelo is going to be fighting Demetrius Andrade. According to sources, they are in serious negotiations. And then as far as the IBF title, with the IBF mandating Sergey Derevyanchenko to fight Gennady Golovkin. That's going to be a great fight as well. However, it's the sport of boxing. It's not set in stone. But if that does take place and the fight with Canelo and Demetrius Andrade takes place, those are going to be two great fights in the middleweight division. And if Golovkin and Canelo both can be successful, that's going to be huge for Canelo Triple G3. That's going to be huge. But we'll see how this unfolds. We'll see how it plays out. And maybe if one of these guys aren't successful in their fights, maybe we get to see Jamal Charlo get into the mix, because we want to see him in the mix as well. But until then, we'll just see how the situation unfolds and how it plays out. Until then, I'll holler at y'all next time. KING, and I'm gone. So I haven't been on YouTube much lately. I originally created this channel for music. I was once an aspiring artist, but through life's twists and turns, pursuing music is no longer a dream of mine. However, I will still upload new music every now and then. I am working on a new album. It's called In Case You Forgot. But constantly putting out new music is a thing of the past for me now. On this channel, I will be focusing mostly on boxing talk. So if you are a fan of music, hip-hop in particular, or if you're a boxing fan, please tap in. When I say tap in, I mean hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you can get all the notifications for all new videos that I drop on the channel. And last but not least, I want to shout out the channels that inspired me to start giving my thoughts and views on what's going on in the boxing world and reporting some of the breaking news of what's going on in the boxing world. So shout out to those guys: Dante's Boxing Nation, Boxing Ego, Blue Blood Sports TV, Goodfellas Sports TV, Famous Athletics, and Gym Boxing. Salute. There's a lot of other channels that I watch and get my boxing knowledge from, but these are the guys that I literally watch and listen to every single day. So be sure to subscribe to all those guys as well. They put out great content every day. And like I said, man, just tap in, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, and I'm out.